Welcome to Conscious Confidence Radio, a timeless wisdom with Sarah Main. Follow host Sarah Main on her ongoing journey of conscious confidence and gain timeless wisdom to unleash unparalleled confidence. A conscious confidence. Learn to ignite the living spark of wisdom, a new narrative for fulfillment contained in Sanskrit and the ancient, powerful, engaging, and fun conscious conversations to discover your own magnificent true self. Learn to dispel the fear shadow as Sarah provides essential knowledge about embracing change and the power of transformation. Get ready, Conscious Confidence starts now.
Hi everyone, my name's Sarah Main. Welcome to Conscious Confidence. This is a show where we explore and delve into the whole issues of confidence, being conscious, self-aware, getting our roots right into ourselves, deep into ourselves. And I'm hanging here with Dr. Pat, the wonderful Dr. Pat, and we're going to have a conversation today about resilience, self-esteem, and conscious confidence. Hi, Dr. Pat.
Well, listen, I'll tell you what, if this is not the perfect show for us today, I don't know what is. And I love this because it so taps into usually what's going on in our lives, in our world, in our circle. And this idea of resilience. I made a comment to you before we were even on air, and I said something like, we originally were going to do this show last week, but we're doing it now. And what a difference a weekend makes, because having seen and heard and tapped into what you've created, I still need to remind myself that there is a new way of showing up in the world. And this show today, resilience, self-esteem, and balance, who doesn't want that? Yeah. But I don't think we know where to start.
Well, exactly. I mean, the whole concept of balance is really interesting. And I'd always known about it, but I saw this young woman in a club, a restaurant, and she was sitting there with her computer, and tattooed on the back of her neck, seriously, without a word of a lie, this happened about 3 weeks ago, on the back of her neck was tattooed a Sanskrit word. And I didn't have my glasses on and I couldn't quite see. And I thought it would be a bit impolite to start staring at this woman's neck. So I went back to my bag, got my glasses and went back up to her and said, look, do you mind if I read this Sanskrit word you've got on the back of your neck? And when I said, this has happened 3 weeks ago. So I'm there peering at the back of this young woman's neck. I said, look, I studied Sanskrit. So I peer at the back of the neck and I didn't recognize the word. So I said, hang on a minute, I've got my laptop with me. I've got a Sanskrit dictionary on my laptop. This is in the middle of a restaurant. So she said, I said, look, you're not going to believe this. I've actually got a Sanskrit dictionary with me. So I went and looked up the word and saw it. And she said, I think it means balance. I just like the look of the word. It's such a beautiful looking script. Mm-hmm. And I was told it meant balance. So she picked this tattoo to put a lasting symbol on her body based on the fact that someone had said it. She thought it meant balance and it looked beautiful. So anyway, I was able to confirm it did mean balance. So I brought my laptop over to her and showed her the word in the Sanskrit dictionary. And it set me thinking about balance. And the word is santulana in Sanskrit. And it comes from a root tul, which means to weigh and to balance and to measure. And then you derive that back to the root ma, and it's all about measure. Mm-hmm. And measure, the essence of measure is knowing when to start, how much energy is needed throughout, and essentially when to stop. So if you think of scales and you're pouring, say, gold dust, you're measuring gold dust. Can you see my hands? Mm-hmm. And you're pouring, you're going to pour because you want balance, balance, balance. And the essence then is to know when to stop. And to do that, to know when to stop, you've got to be awake and aware and conscious. So the essence of balance is being aware and knowing when to start, how much effort throughout, and then when to stop. So we get the balance.
Yeah. And for those of you watching on Facebook Live, Sarah has drawn this for all of you to see what the word looks like. This, Sarah, really links to not only this conversation, but sort of what we're seeing happen in the world, all over the world, with this ancient wisdom that people may or may not know about. Now, this young woman, I'm really grateful to know that she actually did have the right word, the right symbol, because you and I have done previous shows, and we're going to do a few more where we've seen celebrities and other people with Sanskrit on their body, all over their body in some cases, and it not be exactly what they thought it meant.
Yeah. There's a few oops moments there, I think. But anyway, ignorance is bliss.
Exactly. But, in the conversation, when we're looking at this, we're looking at what is the issue around this idea of resilience, self-esteem, and balance. Because one of the issues that I have found in working with women in business and corporations is that they have a definition of balance which is not going to be able to achieve. The definition of balance is not achievable in the way they're looking at it and what they do to themselves. So I think it's interesting what you've put together, because if you have a version of balance which is not achievable, then it affects your self-esteem, how you feel about yourself. When your self-esteem is affected, it affects how resilient we could be.
Exactly. Yeah. And the concept of balance, you have to actually understand, you have to understand that how a human being, or what a human being is comprised of. And if you don't have an accurate picture of the totality of a human being, then your concept of balance will be out of balance immediately by definition, because a human being is comprised of a physical body, obviously, a mental body, an emotional body, and a spiritual body. We talk about body, mind, and heart. There is also the spiritual element to it.
Yeah.
And this is intensely practical. It's not let's sit around and all meditate and bliss out. This is intensely practical. At the school that I taught at was founded on these principles and others. And the curriculum every day for the children addressed the needs of all these bodies, the complete child, the whole person, every single day. And the curriculum was designed to provide for these bodies. And just like the physical body, these bodies require food, what's taken in, and exercise, what's given out. So we all understand food and exercise for the body. I mean, the media everywhere is filled with that, gyms, diets, you name it, eat kale, eat broccoli, don't eat this, do that, exercise, and all the latest fads, right? But we all understand fundamentally the quality of the food taken in and the quality and measure of the exercise taken out. Not too much, not too little of each of those things. But then consider, what is mental food? Do we consider that question? So mental food, and the way we approached it for the children, and this applies to adults as well, it's for everyone, and obviously it'd be age appropriate and time appropriate. Mental food is good quality, stimulating, interesting, substantial, factual information, knowledge, wisdom. Exercise is problem solving, discussion, debate, synthesis, all sorts of exercises like that. It's not just doing the crossword, for example.
Right.
Good thinking skills. But you need to have good material in order to have productive exercise for the mind. I mean, we all know that if we eat junk food for the body, the exercise is not going to be long-term very good quality, because it doesn't have good fuel to work off.
Right.
Same with the mind. Got to have substantial input. Then we have emotional food and exercise. Do we ever consider that in terms of our daily balance? So emotional input is beauty, awe, wonder, magnificence. Now, we're not always going to get that if we're fixated with technology and, say, take a child being fixated on a screen, a handheld device. You need to actually be out in nature and see something beautiful, look at some art, listen to some music. And so emotional input and food is through beauty, awe, wonder, magnificence, all those beautiful emotions. And then exercise is practicing virtue, practicing values, actually knowing what a value is and practicing it practically every day. So practicing courage, for example, practicing perseverance, practicing generosity. So virtues and values, all those things,
Right.
is exercise for the emotional body. And then for the spiritual body, the food is stillness, mindfulness, the stillness and connection from meditation, all of those things. And you don't need as much of the spiritual food as you do of the physical food because it's so potent, because you're working with consciousness directly. And then exercise is for the spiritual aspect of the human being is through meditation and mindfulness, and those elements are prayer, song, beautiful songs can connect us with spirit, feed our spirit, and give it the exercise, the expression, the outward expression that it needs. So if you're catering for all of those aspects of a human being every day, then you've got a chance at actually achieving real balance. But if you don't understand those aspects, then inevitably you will find there will be imbalance.
Yeah. And, the way it shows up, too, we're going to talk about this when we come back from break. We know when our soul is in pain.
Yeah.
As kids, my mom used to be so great at having these expressions. She was from the South. She was from the Carolinas, and so they always had these expressions. I got to tell you, none of us girls understood a word about what she was saying until we were 40. And so she would say things to us about discomfort in our lives. And one of the things I want to talk with you about when we come back is what's going on in our society with our young people and the rise of depression, regardless of age, the rise in anxiety, looking for meaning and not finding it and substituting for it, whether it be food or alcohol or drugs, all of the above. But the question really is, how does that affect our innate desire to achieve balance and harmony, right?
Yeah.
This thing that we have inside says we're not supposed to be topsy-turvy, but yet life goes on, years go on, and we don't know how to adjust it. But when we come back, you're going to take us on a journey. You're working with some young folks. You're seeing how this can be applied across the board and how it's so needed in the workplace. And today we have a special giveaway. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, more with Conscious Confidence, Sarah Main. I'm Dr. Pat. Resilience, self-esteem, and balance through Conscious Confidence. We'll be right back.
Miss any shows during the week? Don't worry, we've got you covered. With the free Transformation Talk Radio app, you'll have access to all of the past week's shows in the palm of your hand. Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio anywhere you go with our free app for any of your devices. Check out our app in the App Store and Google Play Store today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Sarah Main, and welcome to Conscious Confidence Radio, and I'm here with Dr. Pat. I've got a fantastic giveaway for you at the end of the show. If you go to my website, sarahmain.com, that's SARAHMANE.com, sarahmain.com, go to the download button. You can get this fantastic PDF. It's chock full of information on balance, and it's all to do with self-esteem, resilience and balance, and about balancing the whole person. So go to sarahmain.com and get the giveaway. You'll find it really informative and practical. There's lots of tips in it. So I'm here with Dr. Pat. Welcome, Dr. Pat. We're back again.
Yeah.
Talking about self-esteem, resilience and balance.
Yeah. And, before the break, what I was saying is that, we have a sense of when we're not in balance. And we also have a sense of when we don't feel good about ourselves. We also have a sense when we feel worn down emotionally, spiritually, and physically. That means we don't have the resilience that we need. We have a feeling of it. And when you put all of those together, like all at once, it is really not a good time, but we just don't know how to move out of it.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons for putting this show together and putting this information together is more and more I hear really disturbing and concerning statistics of the rise of mental health issues, particularly in young people. And I wonder why this is happening, and I see some of the commentary on it. But what strikes me from my background studying Sanskrit and philosophy and teaching for 30 years is to understand, you have to come back to understanding the fundamentals of a human being. And with the 4 bodies, and we call them bodies, they could be aspects or however you want to describe it, but it's easy to understand if you think of it as 4 bodies, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual, and to feed and exercise each of those bodies appropriately. If you do that, and we had 30 years experience at school doing that with the children, it works. It just works, and it's very practical. Because if you are stuck in the mind, and what I see with a lot of the rise of the mental health issues, there's this unhealthy obsession and fixation between the mental and the physical particularly, and it screws up the emotional side, and that gets out of balance, and there's very little connection with the spiritual. And we get this rise of these mental and emotional issues in young people. And I saw that happen when I was teaching. I remember looking at a boy, and it had never happened before. And I thought, gee whiz, this boy is actually depressed. This is not a boy having a bad day. He's actually depressed. And I'd never seen that before. And I talked to some of my colleagues who were older than me, so they'd been teaching even longer at that time. And they said, yes, they'd noticed it too. This started to happen, and more and more it happens. And now it's commonplace for children to be on medication. And I just can't understand why. If we get the balance right, that needn't happen in every case.
Yeah, and we used to have what we thought was the reason for it, right? We used to think psychological trauma, or we used to think grew up, didn't have enough food. Now, I'm not saying that those are the things that are result in depression, anxiety, and so forth. But we're starting to see it in scenarios where those conditions don't exist.
Exactly. There's been no obvious trauma, and there's, in physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. In fact, the parents have been so concerned, prior to the child even being born, so concerned to give them the absolute best. So there's no question of the motivations of the parents. It's coming from an intense care and concern and love. But for some reason, we're still seeing these mental health issues. Yeah. And I don't believe that fundamentally the child or the young person, that there is a fundamental problem. What I do see is an imbalance, and with the sort of impressions of social media and technology, which you and I didn't have when we were young.
Right.
I think that is an element in this imbalance, and still caring for, feeding and exercising all the bodies, even with technology, embracing the best that technology can offer, and to maintain the balance. That is the challenge we're facing now.
Yeah.
So that these young people are connected with themselves.
Yeah, I think that children are having to come to the place of making a conscious decision in their lives on what they believe. And what
Yeah.
I mean by that, Sarah, is, I don't know if you remember, but you could go on for years and years and years and never have a serious conversation at dinner, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Never be plugged into world events that you could be concerned about. But now it's changed. And, people and children, as well as people of all ages, are really being asked to explore where their core values are. What do you believe in? And
Yeah.
while you think you are okay with what you believed in, every day there's a new level of awakening for people. And children are affected as well as everyone of every age.
Of course, absolutely. And, children are not just these isolated beings. They are intimately connected. Their emotional, basically their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual worlds. They do have a separate one, but depending on the age, their world is actually the world of their parents, and especially the world of their mother. So the emotional state of their mother is their emotional state. It's a sort of intimate link, inextricable link, and it's only as they start to grow that they develop a more independent emotional world, for example. But when they're young, it's their mother's world, really.
Yeah, but this is really, you have developed the Conscious Confidence program to really look at, not just situational analysis, but to really look at what are the parts that an individual can explore, can learn about themselves, can grow, regardless of what's going on the outside. And so you've created that program in Conscious Confidence, and maybe you should tell us a little bit about it, a little bit about F.U.S.E.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly right. The F.U.S.E. program, what we're calling F.U.S.E., is a complete program. It addresses all the aspects of a human being. It's very practical, but deeply spiritual, because the idea is it connects everyone with themselves. And if parents start working on this very practically every day, then they'll immediately see the possibilities with their children. And the transformation can be very quick, because we're talking about consciousness here. So we start with our core values, our true values. If we actually zero in on that and connect with that, that is the start of putting deep roots within ourselves, like a great big tree, magnificent tree. It has deep roots down into the earth, and that's what holds it and gives it the resilience and the strength when the storms of life inevitably blow. There's deep, strong roots to hold it. And that's what we're talking about with the true values. And then we look at the positive attitude. Our attitude is so fundamental. It is the foundation for how we see life, how we experience life, and how we create our own life. So between the true values and the attitude, then we look at F.U.S.E, F-U-S-E, which is focusing, uniting, simplifying, and energizing. And those four energies form the fundamentals of conscious confidence. And my F.U.S.E program, which is the true core values, the attitude, positive attitude, a conscious positive attitude, and then focusing, uniting, simplifying, and energizing. I've got practical tips. It's self-directed. And it is fundamentally transformational.
Right. But, one of the things I loved about, working with you and really looking at this is it's also quite practical when you really think about it. And we're going to talk more about it during the show. But let's just take a look at focusing. When we take a look at just that one aspect What we find is there's very little that we can do in life right now, given the pace that we're operating at, that doesn't require a very keen awareness of what this means.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
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 And more so, we get acutely reminded of when we're not in that space. So when we come back, I know you've got some great stories and examples to share with us, and we'll be talking about that. But before we go to break, I know you've got a great giveaway for everyone. Please tell them how they can download that, and also about your website.
Thanks, Pat. My website is sarahmane.com, pardon me, a bit croaky, sarahmane.com, sarahmane.com. Go to the website, find the download button, and just click that and opt in and download the giveaway. There's 9 pages to it, and there's a bit of Sanskrit to give you the background of the timeless wisdom. There's there's some tables to show you food and exercise and practical tips for the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies. There's some diagrams. There's plenty of information there. Print it out, have a look at it, and get inspired to take some action for yourself and for your family.
Oh, yeah. And more importantly, the wisdom that has, helped you create this is timeless, it's ageless, it's proven, and it happens. And what I love about it is this is something that you'll be able to see changes immediately. And you've got some great stories to share with us. Let's take a short break, everyone. When we come back, how is this playing out in the lives of people that work with Sarah? What kind of changes are being made? And what can you look forward to? Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Miss any shows during the week? Don't worry, we've got you covered. With the free Transformation Talk radio app, you'll have access to all of the past week's shows in the palm of your hand. Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio anywhere you go with our free app for any of your devices. Check out our app in the App Store and Google Play Store today.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Conscious Confidence Radio. I'm Sarah Mane, sarahmane.com. That's my website, sarahmane.com. And I'm here with Dr. Pat, and we're going to talk about some stories of success with catering to the 4 bodies.
Yeah. And, the reason that this is so important to share, Sarah, is that, a lot of times people believe that, or at least in the past, there's been so much said about change and transformation that we're finding today is not true. The old idea theories around this are just not working. And they certainly require people every day of their lives that want a solution to know what it is. And they are willing to make the change. And that's what you're seeing with the people you're working with, especially some of the stories of how folks are changing, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I've worked with adults and children for decades. And when I've had working with an adult in a coaching situation or a child when I was teaching, and they present with a problem, if you understand the 4 aspects or the 4 bodies, the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and just simply how to actually feed and nourish the body with the input and then the exercise, the output, if you just understand the simple principles and fundamentals of that, and this is timeless wisdom, this is not something that's sort of new. It's new only because people have forgotten about it. If you employ this, it's simple, and suddenly people go, oh, gee, I feel so different. This is so much better. And you just simply provide for the whole person, and it addresses any imbalance. And one story that comes to mind is a lovely young boy. At the time, he was 8 years old, and he came from another school and joined my class, came to our school and joined my class. And he was a very sweet boy, very quiet, wouldn't make eye contact. Parents were very concerned. They could see that unless something changed, he would get into the habit of being like that. And they didn't see that that was fulfilling all his potential, and they were right. His academic work was average to below average at best. He was unsure of things. He didn't know what he knew. He didn't talk very much. He was a bit nervy, but a nice kid, wanted to please. So anyway, I just set about working on feeding him up intellectually with all the good material that we had in our curriculum, the substantial stuff that we were teaching. He had to learn some Shakespeare. We were learning pieces to recite, and he had to act. He'd never acted before, so that was scary. But he had the whole emotional, creative, artistic side fed into him. I got onto his academic work and just found all the gaps in his learning and started filling those in and making sure he was sure and secure with each step, and got him actually working so he really could focus his attention properly. Anyway, we catered for the whole thing, and he had to learn some mindfulness because the school was founded on that. So every day, throughout the day, he was having to actually fall still and have some mindful moments where he could just be completely at peace and still within himself. And slowly, it was like getting all these pieces of a puzzle and putting them together into a whole picture and feeding it and strengthening it. And after 6 months, the parents came to the parent-teacher interview, the mid-year parent-teacher interview with the mid-year report. They looked at his academic results. They said, "We can't believe, are you sure this is our son?" They said, I got that a lot. Are you sure this is the same boy? I said, "Yep. They're his results from his exams. He did that." They said, "Wow. This is unbelievable. We don't recognize those results and how he is now in his nature." He was making eye contact. He was enthusiastic. He had a spring in his step. And that's just, if you think of the body and you're malnourished and you feed it properly, you suddenly feel energized and capable and strong. Well, he felt that in his whole person. And he started getting roots deep into himself through the mindfulness. So he had some strength. So he felt like he had self-esteem, and he had some resilience and balance. It's very simple and it's very practical. You don't have to be an expert.
But what I love about this, though, is you look at something and you can see that there's some aspect for you when you're working with people, you could see where they need some of this fuel.
Yeah.
Where it is they could use. And a lot of times, Sarah, we look for things that are on the surface, which may or may not be directly related to how somebody is showing up in the world. And this is going to vary, but if we look at the principles you've laid forward, there's a way to do it, not just for one thing, but for everything in our life.
Everything, yeah. If you have the basic principles and knowledge, you can then apply it depending on whether you're working or responding to a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, or a 50-year-old, or yourself. It doesn't matter. You just need the principles. And that's where the timeless wisdom is so fundamentally powerful. You don't need a whole lot of rules. You just need the fundamental principles. Yeah. And then life is then applying them, and you get better at it. I mean, look, I've had decades at this. I was taught from a young age, and then all my professional teaching career was based on this. Plus, I spent decades tutoring adults in philosophy classes as well, and I've had a coaching practice, so I've coached adults for years, executives, men, women, and you just apply the same fundamental principles and they work every single time.
You know, we're all different, and especially when we're looking at our mental states, you know, we all
Yep.
have certain points of view. And there's a story that you tell about the elephant. And, you know, there could be 5 people in a room watching the same movie, and everybody will have a different opinion. But it's really has to do with this story.
It does, yeah. I mean, it's wonderful that we all see things differently, but to get the full picture, you do need more views than just your individual view. And this traditional story is fantastic. I mean, we used to teach these stories to the children because this is how to get the principles in such a simple way. And adults, children, we all love a good story. But the story is about these a village with these blind people and an elephant. And there was a group of blind people in the village, and they had heard about this thing called an elephant, and none of them had ever experienced an elephant. And they just had no idea what it was like. And so they approached a mahout, and a mahout is a person who works and rides elephants and looks after them, a handler. So the mahout says, okay, I will teach you about an elephant. So he gets his elephant, and he positions each of the blind people at a different point around the elephant. So one's near the tail, one's near the ear, trunk, legs, feet, whatever, the belly. And he says, okay, now touch the part of the elephant. Touch the elephant. He doesn't even say part. He says, touch the elephant in front of you. So one grabs hold of the tail, one grabs hold of the trunk, one grabs hold of the ear. And then he starts asking them, okay, describe elephant. So the one holding onto the tail says, the elephant is like a rope. And then the one holding onto the ear says, an elephant is like a fan waving in the breeze. And then the one holding the trunk says, an elephant is like a hose that's sprays water everywhere. And this goes for all of them, touching a different part of the elephant. Then they all start arguing because they're convinced that their view is the total view, the 100% view that is elephant. And they're arguing and arguing. And then Mahout stops them and says, each one of you is only touching a part of the elephant, your individual experience. You need the totality of your experiences to get the full picture of elephant. And that teaches us a lot about balance and about getting the full picture and the full experience so that we feed all our bodies and not just part of it, part of ourselves. And that's how we achieve balance.
Yeah. And you know what you're talking about too is take a look at the technology in the world we live in and how fast paced everything is. And you could see how we have to learn a new way to be in the world.
Yeah.
Because we clearly live in a world where the elephant is probably a metaphor for life itself in some ways, and how disconnected we can be.
Yeah,
and it doesn't take much, right?
No, that's, yeah. We have to find a new balance because there's still the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies, but we have to find a new way of balancing, staying balanced, so that the resilience and self-esteem is still strong. We have to find a new balance now that technology is such a factor in our lives. And we want to embrace the best of it, but still maintain the right balance.
What do you think is the greatest challenge we have if we look at this? Because clearly people are getting to such a point of pain or distress, right? And then they're looking for something that works. But if we were to be proactive and teach and learn, these tools, this skill now, then we may step in a pothole, but it's not going to be a pothole which takes out most of your car.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. A great question. Look, from my own experience, I think that the greatest challenge is to remain connected with who you truly fundamentally are, regardless of technology, regardless of what's going on outside, as it were. Because as within, so without, as Hermes Trismegistus said. So if we stay fundamentally connected with who we are, and know who that is, then it doesn't matter what's going on the outside. Technology, fantastic, great. Use the best of it. Doesn't matter about the potholes, doesn't matter about the storms and the tempests. Think of the tree and the roots.
Yeah, I mean, and then it brings us back to the F.U.S.E program, right?
It does, yeah.
Because F.U.S.E, F-U-S-E, represents, the way forward, the 4 elements that you help people not just understand, but incorporate in their life every day, regardless.
Yeah, exactly. And it's completely self-directed. My F.U.S.E program is completely self-directed, and it's all derived from timeless wisdom of Sanskrit, which works. It hasn't changed. It's fundamental, and it's part of this thread of consciousness that's spanned the millennia that connects human beings with who they fundamentally are. So no one need feel lost, because they're always with themselves. They just need to know that, and they need to be connected with that, and they need to know how to stay connected, because there are plenty of elements in the world today that create this disconnection, and that's where all the fundamental problems are coming from.
Yeah, and we're talking about a program that incorporates knowledge, that incorporates wisdom, emotional, mental, and most importantly, this is a program of action.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget that.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. This is not just sitting around meditating and having nice thoughts. This is practical for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, mum, dad, executive, at home, parent at home, whether you're young or old, it doesn't matter. It's absolutely universal and can be applied in every situation with everyone, and especially with yourself.
I want to ask you this question. I mean, you and I have spent some time together, and I think about some of the things you've accomplished and even things beyond that. I mean, both of us, for example. I'm probably one of the least likely people to be doing a radio show and so forth based on, what people know about me as a child, as somebody that stuttered. But it isn't just about that. It's also about sometimes there are things in life we want to experience, and we just cannot find or muster up the courage, the self-esteem to do them. Things like dancing, right?
Yeah.
Just being out there, experience joy. This is all part of it. This isn't always just about like how hard we work. No,
and that's where the imbalances and the results of the imbalance occur. It's always, and it comes back to being conscious and awake and aware in the present moment, because what's appropriate for a 10-year-old, obviously for an adult or for an 18-year-old, is different. So if we're continuing to do what we've always done, maybe we ought to have another look and see if that's working for us. Because as you say, maybe something new is what's required to maintain the balance of where you are now. My husband and I took up ballroom dancing several years ago, nearly 10 years ago now, and we were working incredibly hard at the school. My husband was a school principal, I was a teacher, and we were working. And look, we had all the meditation, and people could say, oh, why don't you meditate? We were meditating twice a day, and we were exhausted. And I was physically and more essentially emotionally exhausted, and I didn't know how to address that. I could meditate, and that did address it to a degree, but then for one reason or another, we took up ballroom dancing. And honestly, I walked into that first lesson, and I was emotionally tired. And because there was a lot of giving out and teaching and so on.
Yeah.
And honestly, after a 45-minute ballroom dancing class where I learned how to rumba and do a basic foxtrot, honestly, I felt like I had had a 6-month holiday.
Yeah.
right?
Isn't it
How does
interesting?
that happen? You know, I
But
put
it
yeah,
does. And, you know, but this is the thing, though, that we would not venture out. See,
yes,
sometimes we need some help in just venturing out, you
yeah,
know, in doing things that, you know, bring us joy. Sometimes, you know, just to get out of the house to take that next step.
yeah,
Or let's say go back to school. Maybe you want to go back to school. I know that was the case for me. That was an enormous step for me, you
yeah,
know, to go back to school and go through the process of being evaluated again. And,
yeah,
you know, I wasn't the brightest student right there when I was in school to begin with,
yeah,
but you've got to have all the elements
yeah,
involved.
yeah,
You know, there is emotion, there's spirit,
yeah,
there's being, there's doing.
yeah.
And that's what you've put together in Conscious Confidence, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's about the whole person. It's about bringing about balance. It's knowing enough so that you can respond at different times in your life. And especially for young people, 18 to 30-year-olds, um, it's getting the knowledge early in your life so that
Hmm.
you don't find yourself exhausted in your 40s like I was. And I look, honestly, I had a ton of knowledge. I just didn't appreciate, and I was working with children and I was doing everything, but I didn't appreciate how to actually take it to the next level with myself. And I had to get honest and real with myself about my needs. And I looked again and I found there were imbalances. And once I started addressing those, I just felt like a completely different person. Um, and that showed me the way forward. And that's how I came to conscious confidence eventually, and working with you, combining the Sanskrit and this knowledge to make it available for everyone, because it's
Yeah.
very simple and really practical.
Yeah. Sarah, I know that every show, there's a very special message that you bring forward in ancient Sanskrit. And I would love for you to, you know, invite folks to experience that now.
Thank you. I'm just going to get my notes.
Okay, good.
I do actually know it by heart, but sometimes, you get a mental blank.
Especially when you're live on Facebook and on the radio, that few things like that could happen, maybe.
Go blank. This verse from Sanskrit is from the Bhagavad Gita, which is a portion of a greater epic work called the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is actually at least 100,000 verses of Sanskrit. It's an epic poem. It's a wonderful story. And there's a section in there called the Bhagavad Gita, which is the essence of ancient wisdom about knowing your true self. And in here is one verse, and it's called the discipline for speech, because speech is so powerful. And we taught this to the children, and it really, really works. So this is the English translation is speech that hurts no one, that is true, is pleasant to listen to and beneficial, and accords with the words of the wise. This is the discipline for speech. And the Sanskrit is Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyayabhyasanam chaiva Vangmayam tapa uchyate.
When we take that in, when we listen, everything is energy, isn't it?
It's all energy.
It's all energy. And one of the things we didn't mention was that living this balanced life, having resilience, right? Having high self esteem, that's really not meant just for a handful of people like we somehow think. See, we have that notion. What you're helping us do is restore us to our natural state, the state that we were brought into this world with.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And the wisdom of Sanskrit will do that.
Mm. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, would you tell us about the giveaway you have?
Sure. The giveaway is called Balancing the Whole Person. It's available on my website, sarahmane.com, sarahmane.com, sarahmane.com. Go to the download button and hit that, opt in and pick up the download. Print it out, have a look. There's tons of information about balancing the whole person.
I have one last question. I'd love to know, again, website and what you want to leave us with. What is your personal message for today?
Okay, website, sarahmane.com, sarahmane.com, sarahmane.com. And the message I'd like to leave is to take a moment, take a deep breath, and just spend a moment with yourself. You don't need words or thoughts. Just spend a moment with yourself.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything.
Thanks, Pat.
Awesome.